Hey guys, and welcome back to the Elevate HD podcast. I am your host, as always, Holly Davidge, and this is a solo episode today where I will be talking about finding your own way of doing things, because I think it's so easy to go onto Instagram, scroll through your news feed, and be bombarded with people who are telling you you must follow a strict meal plan, you have to do it X way, you must do Y thing. And it's very dogmatic in terms of what it wants you to do, almost like there's only one way of doing things. But I think what we need to discover ourselves and learn along the way is that the principles never change, but there's many different methods to achieve the same goal. And this is something I kind of learned the hard way through my experience. And I kind of want to pass this on to you so that you don't have to make mistakes, the same mistakes that I've made, and that you can kind of learn from me, so that you know that there is a better way to do things. There is a way that suits you. And this will allow you to have the longevity in this game that you want to have, because I think it's really common for people to go into their first prep. They might hire a coach that gives them a very strict meal plan, a very rigid approach to prep, no kind of flexibility at all. And they may do that prep once and then drop off the face of the earth, and then you never see or hear from them again. And I think this is all too common, especially for bikini competitors, to go in, do one season, and then be done with it. Whereas obviously I've been in the competing game for quite a while now. I did my first prep I started in January of 2018. So it's been 5 years since I did my first prep. So I have had that longevity in the sport. I'm still here. I'm still kicking, and I don't plan on giving up yet. So I think I can transcend my learnings and my knowledge onto you guys, just so you have that longevity in the sport. Because I don't want you to do a prep and feel overwhelmed and feel restricted and then burn out, and then that's it. Because my priority is for you guys to have the longevity in the sport that you want to, where whether you want to do a couple of seasons or do it for a couple of years, or whether your goal is to turn pro or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that you get out of it what you want to get out of it, and you don't prematurely have to retire or end your competitive career too early, or end your physique development journey too early. Because this doesn't just apply to competitors, it also applies to people who have a physique goal, people who want to get in a good shape, people who want to build muscle, lose body fat, do a photo shoot. It doesn't really matter what your goal is, but the principles behind having the longevity and not burning out prematurely apply to everyone. So as I said before, I kind of learned the hard way that the rigid approach to prepping and fat loss just does not work for me, and I do not enjoy it. So I did my first prep, as I said, back in January of 2018. It was unnecessarily restrictive and strict, but I didn't know any better at the time. Obviously, I'd only been training for about a year. I'd only been kind of following a coach for about a year. So I was very new to the sport, and I didn't really understand what was necessary and what wasn't necessary. I was given a very strict meal plan. I wasn't allowed to just follow calories. I think I had sweet potato and chicken twice a day. I had oats. I wasn't even allowed to have whey protein because it was too processed and it had too many chemicals in it. So I had purely like single ingredient foods. I had no dairy. I wasn't allowed to have any fruit that wasn't berries. I wasn't allowed to have any vegetables that weren't green. I had to have apple cider vinegar in the morning, obviously to promote fat loss, which is a bit of a myth. And there was no wriggle room. There was no substitutions or swap outs. Like I once asked if I could have an apple instead of my usual berries for the same amount of carbs and calories, and I was told that I couldn't do that. So I figured out along the way that I developed a lot of fatigue and tiredness just from following this plan to a T, when in actual fact, if I had been a bit more flexible and had the substitutions I wanted and did it more by my way, I probably would have enjoyed the process better, and I probably would have made more results, if not just the same amount of results, by doing it my way. But I think it takes time and trial and error to figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and what you need to do to keep yourself in the game in the long run. So thankfully, that first prep didn't actually scar me for life too much, because I did keep going. But I wouldn't have blamed myself if I did burn out after that, because I was doing 60 minutes of HIIT. No, not 60 minutes, 30 minutes of HIIT at a time. I was doing 60 minutes of cardio at the time. I was doing a really, really strict meal plan with no flexibility, and I was exhausted. I just genuinely thought that was prep. That was what prep was. And it was only kind of going into my second and third seasons that I realized that a lot of that was unnecessary restriction, unnecessary torture on myself and exhaustion that wasn't necessarily leading me to a better result. It was just causing me a great amount of stress. So I think it's really, really important to find your own way of doing things, both for your longevity in the sport and so that you don't burn out too soon. And I don't want you to be the kind of person that's just a one and done if you don't want to be. Obviously, if you have a goal that you just want to step on stage for the first time and only time, or if you just want to do one photo shoot, that's fine. But a lot of us want to be in it for the long haul. And I think it's important to find your big rocks. I don't know if you know the analogy with the big rocks and the sand and the pebbles. So many of us worry about the sand in terms of nutrient timing, in terms of how many meals per day, when really we should be worrying about the big rocks first, which is our calories, our macros, our expenditure, then the pebbles, and then the sand. And it should go kind of in that order rather than the other way around. So going into specifics, there's kind of two ports of call out here. Obviously, as a physique competitor or as someone who has a physique related goal, you usually have two phases. You have your fat loss phase and you have your muscle building phase. And this kind of applies to both because I think there can be that unnecessary restriction and that pressure to be perfect in both aspects. But if we move to nutrition, as I said, my first experience was a very strict meal plan. And ever since that, I've only really followed flexible dieting or macro counting for the rest of my preps and my other two preps. And I find this has really, really worked for me. So I'm given a carb, fat, and protein goal where I use meals and tweak my meals to kind of get to that target each day. But there's many different ways to do it. Obviously, you can follow a meal plan. There's nothing wrong with meal plans if that is something that suits you. A lot of people think that it does reduce their decision fatigue day to day. It does help them kind of not have to think about so much of a day in a day. It's less stressful. You don't have to do a different food shop every time. You can literally reorder your same food shop every single time. It takes the decision making away. It's not as overwhelming. You can kind of just go on autopilot and eat your meals. And while this does work for some people, for others, they find it a bit too restrictive, a bit too strict. Not very flexible and not very adaptable to a life where you're traveling, or if you have a busy work schedule, or if you work shifts, or if you can't eat during the day because you're in a lab or you're in the hospital or something like that, and you just can't get that meal structure in. So for those people, something like tracking macros would probably be a better option for them in terms of adherence and enjoyment long term. Then there is kind of the more simpler option, which is just tracking calories and protein. And I think for most people, this is a really good option. The only caveat to this is if you are a physique competitor you are about to step on stage, you need to be a bit more specific in terms of your carb, fat, and protein requirements so that you can kind of manipulate them adequately for your goals. But I'd say for most people in the off season and for most people with a physique goal for a photo shoot or a holiday or an event or a wedding, this is more than sufficient. And having a protein and calorie goal gives you so much flexibility in terms of food selection, in terms of choices, in terms of, needing to grab things on the go. And it just takes a lot of pressure off because you're not trying to play macro Tetris every single day, trying to squeeze exact grams out of a meal and fit everything perfectly together, which is fine if you're working from home or if you are an online coach full time or if you're a PT full time and you have that ability to be more specific, do your meal prep or make meals from scratch every time. But if you are someone that is on the go and your life changes day to day, you have a hectic schedule, things are always up in the air, you're traveling, calories and protein can be a really good option because it opens up so much variety for you. Like, I don't know about you, but these days I am amazed at going into petrol stations because they just have so many options for people like us who want to stay on track. They always have a decent selection of protein bars. They have ready to drink protein drinks. They usually have cooked chicken. They usually have salad boxes. They usually have tons of fizzy sugar-free drinks. And I actually find it quite easy when I'm on the road to stop off at a service station and pick up things I need to make sure that I'm adhering to my goals. Like a lot of services even have like Marks and Spencers and lots of different things to ensure that you stay on track. So I think that is something you need to decide for yourself. Like, am I that person that wants to be on a strict meal plan day to day because I find it easier, I find it enjoyable, and I like the way I don't have to stress about, making different choices for food or making different recipes or thinking of different dinner options every day? Maybe a meal plan is for you. if you find, God, I love being able to fit in a chocolate bar in the day, or I love the fact that I can change my dinners and change my lunches day to day, maybe something like macro tracking is for you. Or if you're just someone that has so much going on in the day that you don't even know where you are, where you're going to be, whether you're going to be on the road or on a flight or at the airport or something like that, or in a hotel, calories and protein can be a really good option. Like, for example, I was away the past 2 weeks. I went to Vienna last week at work, and then I was in London last week at work. Both required 2 night hotel stays. I didn't bring a scale. I didn't bring protein. I didn't bring anything, but I was really able to eyeball things by kind of adhering to a calorie and protein goal for the most part. Because, hotel breakfasts are relatively easy to navigate. You always have eggs, you always have bacon, you always have toast, you always have things like that. Lunches, especially when they're catered for and they're more like buffet options, you control the portion sizes you want. You can control how much protein goes on your plate. And then at dinner time, we had a barbecue this week, which was so easy. Like, I think barbecues are perfect for people who are trying to follow a diet, because you get there, obviously the priority is meat at a barbecue. It's all about the meat, and then you have your own sides. And also, it's not rude, or it's not unpolite of you to bring your own food to a barbecue, because you can obviously offer it to the other people who are there, the other patrons, the other invitees. And then you have something there that you can eat. So you can make a healthy salad, you can make some vegetables, you can make things to go with your main meal. And the meat that's cooking you're not using any oil to cook the meat on the barbecue. So it's actually a really friendly, macro friendly, diet friendly way of socializing, eating out, seeing your friends, enjoying the summer, but without kind of deviating from your fat loss goals. So that is how I navigated last week when I was away, is that, I had buffets all the time, so I could control the portions that went on my plate. I need to prioritize protein and veg, so I did that. And I just kind of loosely followed a calories and protein approach, and I didn't gain any weight. I actually lost a bit of weight when I went to Vienna, even though I wasn't exactly tracking 100%. It didn't seem to matter. So I think that's another lesson there, is that you don't need to be 100% accurate to get results. You just need to try. You just need to do your best and just kind of minimize the errors where possible. So they are the kind of three options that I would choose, but you don't also have to adhere to one way. You don't have to say, I am a meal planner, or I am a macro tracker, or I am a calories and protein gal. You can choose. You can flip between each one and swap depending on the day. So Monday to Friday, you can say, God, I love having the stability and the structure of a meal plan Monday to Friday. But then maybe Saturday, Sunday, you macro track because you're going out to eat with your friends, or because you're on the go, or because things are a bit more flexible for you. You can choose and do a couple in a week. You can switch day to day. You can switch meal to meal. It doesn't really matter, as long as you find a way that suits you. You can also do things like high and low days. Like, maybe, on your training days, you get super hungry, so you have higher days. And on your rest days, you're not so hungry, so you can have lower days. Or you can think, God, my Saturdays are super busy and I usually go out to eat on a Saturday, so I'm going to have that as a high day. And then the rest of the days keep them a bit lower to kind of account for that discrepancy. A lot of people still bank their calories. Now, this is kind of up in the air on whether this works for you. I think this very much depends on the individual. But by saving like 100 to 200 calories a day from your day, your six days a week, so on your seventh day, you can have an extra bump in calories and have a bit of a bolus of calories to spend on something that you want. If you're going out to eat, if you want to have a treat, if you want to get an ice cream because the weather's hot. And that gives you that ability to be a little more flexible on one day of the week when you're going to be a bit more social and out and about. So that is something to consider there. So yeah, you don't have to pick one way. You don't have to just commit to being a meal planner or being a macro tracker or being a calories and protein person, because you can definitely flip between them depending on what suits you that day, that minute, that hour. I'm very much a reactive kind of person, because in my line of work, I have a full-time job working in clinical trials. So that means that I go to site, I visit hospitals, I'm traveling up and down the country, I have a lot of overnight stays, there's conferences I have to go to, and I do have to think on my feet a lot. So sometimes when I'm going to site, I'll meal prep some things, but it'll be too heavy to bring too much if I'm getting the train. So I'll meal prep some things and have them kind of adhering to my meal plan. And then other things I might do more macro based if I'm going to the shop, or I can get a delivery order in of groceries. That's another great hack, if you're in a hotel or an apartment, Deliveroo groceries is so handy. So I do that sometimes, or I'll go to the local M&S or the local Tesco Express or whatever and get my bits there. And I find it very easy at this point. I kind of almost do it on autopilot when I travel. It just doesn't bother me at all. But I know some people do worry about traveling while, having a fat loss goal or a muscle building goal or a physique goal. So that's definitely something I can touch on in a future podcast if that is something you'd be interested in. But then moving on from the actual structure of your calories, obviously we know as long as the calories and the protein is equated most of the time, it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you macro track, meal plan, or calorie and protein goal. But how you distribute them is also going to depend on you. Now we know optimally, according to the research, we want to have 4 to 6 meals per day, each consisting of at least 25 grams of protein. And the reason for that is that we want enough protein and enough leucine specifically, which is an amino acid in that protein, to spike and hit that leucine threshold and spike our muscle protein synthesis. So in order to do that, we need to have 25 grams of protein, so we can get our 3 grams of leucine, spike our muscle protein synthesis and hit that leucine threshold to get our maximum amount of muscle protein synthesis that we can get at a time. So the best way to do that is 4 to 6 boluses of protein throughout the day. Apart from that, it's pretty much up to you whether you want to have 4 meals a day or 6 meals a day. Also, in terms of meal timings, like some people get up from sleep or from bed and they're starving and they just need to eat right then and there. Other people get up and they're not hungry for hours until maybe 11, 12, 1 o'clock. There's no reason why you need to necessarily eat if you're not hungry. So I would say kind of experiment and figure out when you're at your most hungry, when you're at your least hungry, and distribute your calories and meals across appropriately. So if you're starving in the evening and you know you're going to be up and looking for snacks and having cravings at that point, save calories for the evening so you can have something sweet, you can have a snack, you can have a larger meal before bed, and it will stave off those hunger and those cravings, so that when you go to bed you're not feeling starving, you're not feeling deprived, and you're feeling kind of full and content. My favorite meal at the moment, which really sets me up for bedtime, is my Greek yogurt meal. And I have said it all the time that in my past I've never eaten Greek yogurt in an off season because I've just thought that I haven't been able to stomach it, but I really do enjoy it. But it has to be the cheaper Greek yogurt that's a bit looser and kind of a bit more liquidy than the thick like Fage one. Don't come at me about how I say Faye, because I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. I think it says it on the actual pot that it's pronounced Faye, but anyway, phage also sounds weird. I'm going off topic. So Greek yogurt, non-fat, frozen berries. I usually use summer fruits. Then I have cereal. So at the moment I have 75 grams of cereal, and sometimes I do a mix of different cereals, and some almond butter, and I mix it all up. I top it with cinnamon. I grind some salt over it. And honestly, it is the perfect pre-bed meal. It's satisfying, it's satiating, it's filling, it's tasty. And also, obviously, the Greek yogurt has casein in it. And there are studies, it's kind of hit and miss on whether it's 100% true, but there are studies and there has been kind of research to suggest that having a casein-based meal pre-bed instead of a whey-based meal is better in terms of preventing muscle protein breakdown as you sleep, because the casein in it is a slower releasing protein than a whey, which is kind of a faster absorbing and assimilating protein. So a slower digesting protein before bed can also keep you fuller for longer. It helps to slow the release of the protein and to reduce the muscle protein breakdown potential as you sleep. So that's kind of what I do there. I tend to have my first meal as a carb-free meal. I usually just have 2 eggs, 2 chicken sausages or 2 bacon medallions and some veg, and kind of keep my carbs towards the end, like more peri-workout and then pre-bed, and that just suits me. But again, it might not suit you. You might like to have a big bolus of food in the morning. Like for example, Jasmine, I know she likes in her off season to eat a good portion of her food in the morning because that's when she's at her most hungry, and then she'll taper it off towards the end of the day because she doesn't feel as hungry and she's busy and she has lots going on. So again, find a way that suits you. Either way is right, neither way is wrong. It's just important to find a way that you can adhere to, that you enjoy, that isn't as much of a struggle, and it's just easy overall. And it comes down to it again, as long as you understand the principles that if you were in a fat loss phase, you need to be in a calorie deficit. If you're in a muscle building phase, you need to be in a calorie surplus. As long as you get enough protein in, obviously, of course, we need like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of protein per person, obviously per kilo. As long as you get that right, a lot of it can be adapted to suit you as an individual and what works for you in terms of your lifestyle. Maybe you have kids, maybe you have a busy job, maybe you have a lot of travel, and we need to make sure that it works for you. In terms of socializing, this is another thing. Like, obviously, when you're on prep for a show, it's going to be a bit more strict, and you may not have the capacity, especially towards the end of a prep, to fit in meals out and to socialize how you would like to. But especially at the beginning of a prep, but also for photo shoot preps, for events that you're working towards, a holiday you're prepping for, a wedding that you're trying to get in shape for, any of these things, you can definitely factor in meals out. And I think these days it's easier than it's ever been, because every place understands that people are dieting and people want low fat, healthy options. It's easy to get a bunless burger. It's easy to go to Subway and get a Subway salad. By the way, I have a Subway salad in my fridge and I'm looking forward to eating it later. Subway salads are the biggest diet hack. And I know I've talked about this with Jazz before on the podcast, but you literally can have double meat if you want. You can get all the veg you want. You don't have to get any of the extra fats if you don't want to. It's easily trackable, and it's the same price no matter how much veg you get on it or how many toppings you get on it, which I think is just the biggest hack ever. You can get it for like £6, a big salad with double meat, all the veg you want. I'm weird and I get the jalapenos and the gherkins and stuff like that as well, and the crispy onions because I'm off season and I can do that. But they're just so easy. But even going to Nando's, I was just talking about this with a client earlier who went to Nando's with their colleagues. A chicken butterfly, remove the skin, is about 250 calories. You can get the tender stem broccoli, you can get the mixed salad, you can get the rice, which is about like 270 calories. And most of their sauces are quite low calorie as well because they're not fatty. So things like that are super easy to track. Most restaurants have a whole section on MyFitnessPal now that you can literally go through the whole database and pick out what you want to eat. The one thing I would say with social events is if you do know where you're going in terms of restaurants, make sure you plan ahead, because there's nothing worse than getting to the restaurant, looking at the menu and thinking, oh God, what am I meant to order? I don't know. You feel overwhelmed. There's pressure because people want to get ordering because they're hungry. It's getting late. They don't want you to be kind of humming and hawing over the menu. So make sure you have a plan of action, know where you're going ahead of time, check the menu in advance, read over it, make sure you know what your best options are, and go in prepared. And then you don't have to make any last minute decisions. You won't make any impulsive decisions in terms of, screw it, I'll just have the burger if you're on a diet, because that is the worst thing you can do, is just go in and make an impulsive decision based on emotion or based on your hunger at the time. And then you'll look back and think, oh, why was I not more prepared for this? So be prepared in advance. Make sure you know where you're going, or if not, have some global guidelines. This is something that I do with a lot of my clients, that even if they don't know where they're going necessarily for a restaurant, will have global guidelines on what they should stick to. Having a protein serving, having a veg serving, trying to keep it low fat, trying to have sauces on the side, trying to have, sugar-free drink with it, and just setting those guidelines, which kind of subconsciously help you track calories, even if you're not tracking them for that meal. And I find that really, really helpful as well. So these are kind of my overall tips in terms of doing what works for you in terms of your nutrition for fat loss, for muscle building. I will do another one on training because I think that would be really useful as well, but I just wanted to keep this a short one. The bottom line is, if you want longevity in the sport, if you want to be in it for a long time, if you want to pursue a physique development goal for years to come, it's really important that you watch your own mental health and try not to burn out too soon by doing things that are unnecessarily restrictive, that aren't going to necessarily give you a better outcome if you were to flexibly diet or be a bit more adaptable or be a bit less rigid with your approach. So it's important to try and error, to try everything once and make note of what's working for you, what's not working for you, what are you enjoying, what are you not enjoying, and use that to refine your approach over time, so that eventually you'll come to a point where you say, I know exactly how I want to eat. I know exactly what I want to eat. I know what works for me. I know what doesn't work for me. And now I know moving forward how best to diet, how best to muscle build, how to do things in a way that suit me as an individual and that are aligned with my goals, my morals, and my priorities at the time. So I think that is really important. But guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode. Please let me know by sharing it. Take a screenshot, add it to your story, tag myself. I'm at Holly_Physique Collective on Instagram. If you do need any help with your fat loss goals, your muscle building goals, your photo shoot prep goals, your show prep goals, anything like that, I obviously do offer online coaching. So if you want more information like that, just don't be afraid to shoot me a DM asking for more information. We can have a chat. I can give you all the details that you need. And it's no obligation at all. Obviously, I just want to help. So just if you want to know more information, just don't hesitate to reach out there. And that is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Any questions, just drop them my way. As always, on Instagram, my DMs are always open. And I will speak to you soon.